Hi, this is 365801 and this is day 17 of the 25 days of manga. As you can see from the thumbnail, this is my entry for a cozy sweater, and that is because I saw someone mentioning it on Twitter and they had posted the image of the front cover. This is a futekiya title, so they were talking about how it was being released and every day was a new chapter and they were excited about reading it. And it just was perfect. I thought, great, I'm actually really interested in this story. I've been meaning to read it, and there's a new volume out. And this one has a sweater. Brilliant. It will just be something to read. So the mood struck and I went with it. I want to read a bit more of futekiya, so I was quite happy to just pop on over and read some digital manga for a bit. Now, the volume in question is Pornographer Playback. This is the image of the main character and he is wearing a nice cozy sweater. So that was the image that I thought, great, I will be reading that one. Now, if you head over to the futekiya website and you click on Marukido Maki, then you get to see all of the works that they have available on their library, and she has 4 works. Now, I only read 3 as they are a series, a 3-volume series, following the same character. There is a 4th one there, and I might be interested in picking up and reading it later. Now, to be able to read Pornographer Playback and understand what's going on, of course, I would have to read the first 2 volumes in the series. The first one being Pornographer and the second one being Mood Indigo. Now, I heard a lot about Pornographer. It became really, really popular when it came out, and it became really popular on futekiya as well. So I've heard a bit about it, but I wasn't really sure exactly what it was about. So I was really looking forward to actually starting it and reading it. And the fact that it was 3 volumes meant I could really get my teeth into a really good story. Now, the plot of Pornographer follows a university student who is called Kuzumi Haruhiko. One day, unfortunately, he causes an accident whilst riding his bicycle, and in that accident, he causes Kijima Ryo, who happens to be a writer, a novelist, to break his arm. Now, Kuzumi doesn't have a lot of money because he is a student, so he doesn't have the money to pay for the insurance or the hospital bills, or in Japan you sometimes pay compensation to people if you've caused them any inconvenience, and he doesn't have any funds to pay Kijima for the injury that he's caused. Now, it's at this point that Kijima asks Kuzumi to help him with his job, which is to transcribe a story that he is writing. And of course, when he says yes, he would like to help, that way he doesn't have to feel bad, because Kuzumi generally comes across as a very earnest young man. He wants to help and he wants to make amends. And so when he goes to his Kijima's house to help transcribe the story, it's at that point that he learns that it's obscene or pornographic stories that Kijima is writing. It's at this point that they start to get to know each other a little bit more, start spending more time together, and the relationship develops from there. Now, in this first story, we are also introduced to another character, and that is Kido Shiro, who is a former classmate of Kijima and also his editor at the publishers who publish his pornographic stories. So he now has a working relationship with him, as well as sort of unavoidable friendship too. There's also a lot of suggestion that there's been some sort of history between the two in that first volume, and Kuzumi is also very intrigued as to what went on between the two of them in the past, which is quite interesting. And it's only when we get to volume 2 that we actually find out a little bit more. Now, this first volume I found really interesting, really entertaining. It had great pace. The art style throughout all of her works is really accessible, but it's also very adult, and it has a really nice atmosphere. It doesn't have too much going on. It's not cluttered in any way. It tells a story in a nice sort of measured way. I really love the artwork for its stark whites and thick lines, but without overpowering the image so that it's muddied in any way. It's very crisp and clean. I really like her art style. It's really nicely done. It does exude an adult, mature feeling across the page, and that really helps to ground the story in a much more adult setting. Now, obviously, with the title being pornographer, you're going to expect a lot of sexual content, and that's kind of reflected in what goes on and what's in the story. Futekiya gives it a 4 spicy chili rating. So there is definitely some sexy scenes, and it does get very hot and heavy and heated, but there's an underlying feeling there. It's a really sexy feeling. I really love the underlying sexuality that's in this first volume. I can see why it became so popular. There's almost like a building of tension throughout the story. It doesn't climax. It just exudes sexuality. I really liked that about this first volume. And when I finished it, it was an automatic guarantee that I was just going to go straight on to Futekiya and click on the next volume. I needed to know more about these characters and more about this world, and I was like, fingers crossed it was going to be just as mature, just as sexy. It kind of just gave me the sense of ryokans and tatami mats and yukatas, and it just had this exuding sense of Japanese sex, which seems a bit odd, but mature, adult, almost Taisho era-esque. It has this sort of feel. It doesn't actually deal with any of those things, but it's just, two people spending a lot of time in the room together, and it's quiet but measured but full of sexual tension, and I really enjoyed the first volume. So this second volume really does deal with Kido and Kijima's relationship. I knew that that's what it was going to be about, so I wasn't in any way confused, and I was actually really looking forward to finding out what had kind of been planted as seeds of mystery as to what exactly was their relationship, what had gone on between the two of them that Kazumi had no idea about and was still kind of in the dark about. So this second volume really focuses on their story, and it begins with Kido and Kijima reacquainting at a university teacher's funeral. They were former classmates, although they were only really aware of each other in passing. They weren't really friends. So when they were students, Kijima was able to publish a novel, and it was very successful, and he earned a big prize. And Kido unfortunately became quite jealous of Kijima's success, and when he read the story, he kind of came to the realization that he lacked that same talent, and he decided to give up on writing novels, and instead he became an editor, and ironically became an editor of erotic novels in a publishing house, something that he, I think, struggled with in terms of accepting whether or not he was happy with that job. When he reunites though, he's in a pretty bad way. He's now lost his apartment and his girlfriend has decided to break up with him because of his choice of profession, being an editor for erotic novels. It becomes clear that Kijima is also in a way stuck in life. He's also in a position where he doesn't know what he's doing, and he has not been able to pursue writing in the same way that he had hoped, given his earlier success. So the two of them reconnect just after this, teacher's funeral, both in a way stuck in life, not sure what they're doing. One has a house and no job, one has a job and no house. So, of course, they end up forming some sort of relationship and living together briefly. So, Kido, being an editor and looking for opportunities, he decides to offer Kijima the chance to write pornographic novels. This is not something that he particularly wanted to do, but he ends up taking it on. There's another character that's in this second volume who I really actually like a lot, and I think it's is it Gamoda? I think he's an older writer who also has, an extensive back catalogue of erotic novels, and he ends up getting introduced as this mentor figure for Kijima so that he can learn the craft of erotic novels. He's a little bit of a sadist though, and so in being this mentor, but being a little sadistic and being an old man with nothing to lose, he in fact opens a few doors to Kijima and Kido and maybe shows them things that or forces them to confront things that they have kept hidden themselves, and that is their own sort of intense eroticism, that idea that they need to let go to be able to feel and experience, and therefore really truly express in written form. It's very lustful, it's a little bit toxic, but it's an amazing sense of building in climax. Although in the first volume you didn't really have that, it didn't ever feel like it climaxed. It always just felt like it was just there, this sexual tension. In this one, it's like up and down, pulsing, almost sexual in itself. But also with this amazing, lovely mentor-mentee relationship with the elderly erotic novelist and the, fledgling erotic novelist being a surrogate father and son. It's actually a really delicate little adult story going on there as well. This particular volume has the highest spicy chili rating and of 5, and I definitely see why. Mood Indigo is worthy of this extra spicy chili rating. I loved this one. Like, Pornographer was good. I was like, oh, this is so good, I'm gonna need to read the next one. But Mood Indigo was so much more. And when I talk about how Pornographer was, like an adult one, this is the adult one. It's like, oh, okay, no, I see this. It's like when you're younger and you think, well, I can try some wine, but I'm not really, I can drink it, but I'm not really enjoying it so much. Maybe you're just, into your 20s and someone says, hey, do you want a glass of wine? You're like, okay. But you don't really drink wine. And you're like, oh, okay. I feel so adult, I'm drinking wine. Mood Indigo is when you're, you're in your 40s and you've cultivated, you're a connoisseur of red oh no, I don't like this red wine, but this red wine's lovely. You know, it's a great year. It's that whole sense of there's another element of maturity there. There's another element of being adults. And it's not just about the sex or the lust or the eroticism, but it's also about the conflicting emotions and the complicated nature of relationships. It's very good. It's very good. Mood Indigo was really a top volume for this series. Now, when it came to the new volume, this is Pornographer Playback. The author, Marukido Maki herself, was very clear, and she stated it in the afterword section, that she wasn't sure if she really wanted to do this third volume, because she had already really felt like she'd put everything on the page in the first two, that Pornographer had done so well. She'd been given an opportunity to do Mood Indigo, and that it was a hard one to do because everyone had expectations. But she felt like she had really taken the energy of the first volume and gone with it with the second, and was able to tell the story that she had already, formed. She had the backstory already, whether it was going to be something that anyone else, fans or consumers, ever got to hear. She, in her mind, had the story already planned out. So those two volumes are, in a sense, companions to each other. But she was so surprised, and everyone was so happy about how well they had done, that she was asked to do a third volume. And so she found this much more difficult because she felt like she'd put everything on the page already. And if I'm honest, I personally do think that the first two volumes in the series are the stronger. That's not to say that I didn't relish reading the third volume, because it's like, great, these characters, I want more. I want to know what's been going on. How did this happen? And once again, we skip around in time frames. So Mood Indigo deals with the past, but then it has that one powerful little chapter at the end where you're like, oh, yes, please. And that last chapter in Mood Indigo actually happens at the end of Pornographer Playback. So Pornographer Playback kind of happens after Pornographer, but before that last little chapter in Mood Indigo. So she's had to kind of tinker around with a few things in terms of the timeline of what's happening. So Pornographer Playback is when we get introduced or reintroduced to Kijima and Kuzumi's romantic relationship. So we're back with them. However, Kijima has returned to his hometown. He's now living with his mother and his sister and their family, and they're only kind of keeping the relationship going by correspondence. Kuzumi has been able to graduate from university. He's now got a job, and he's working really hard. It sounds awful. But they're not really in the same place. They're having to do this long distance thing, and it's not necessarily working out well. Kijima then unfortunately injures his arm again. But this time it is actually his writing arm. And in doing so, he does meet this young man called Akemi. And so once again, Kijima, being Kijima, he asks Akemi to transcribe his writing. This time it's more for real. He's not just messing around. He's doing it for real this time. And this obviously makes him reminisce about this time that he spent with Kuzumi and how they first became acquainted and how their relationship started. And of course, Kuzumi is trying to make efforts to maybe get Kijima to be more committed to him, to be more involved in the relationship, to be with him more. He's wanting more from the relationship, and Kijima is maybe just putting on the brakes a little emotionally. So it's an interesting volume where there's a lot of well, I guess pushing and pulling, and I guess that's what she's trying to put across, and that's one of the key aspects, I think, that's actually stated within the story. When Kuzumi goes to Kido, he states, hey, instead of pushing all the time, why don't you try pulling, like back off and see if he follows you. And it definitely seems as though the relationship between them is all about pushing and pulling in this volume. Like, at one point, one's doing the pushing and the other's doing the pulling, and it's the other way around. It's kind of a stop-start aspect to the relationship. They're not quite getting there, which we know that they will eventually, because we've seen it in the previous volume. So yeah, this is an interesting one. I have to say, this was not my favourite volume out of the three. And maybe the fact that there's only a 2 spicy chili rating has something to do with it. Like I said earlier, I don't know why, but there's a lot of spiciness in what I've been reading this 25 Days of Manga. And the less the spicy, the less I'm enjoying. I'm just putting it out there. But yeah, Pornographer and Mood Indigo had a lot of spicy chilies, and Pornographer Playback only has 2. So maybe that has something to do with it, or maybe it's because it's a little bit more dealing with the domestic side, the realistic side, and so the tension that is in this story is very different from the tension. It's less lustful and it's more emotive, and so that's where I think the tensions lie. Now, all 3 of these volumes are lovely, and I recommend all 3. The characters are really interesting. There's a lot of depth to them. There's a lot of interest. There's a lot of real humanity there. And so in terms of the characters and their development across the series, it's really good. There's like genuine character development and progress and change. But there's also having to overcome what it is that you actually are and acknowledging who you are. There's a lot of depth to this story from the character perspective. As I mentioned already, the artwork is lovely and very adult in feeling, and so overall this 3-volume series is a really, really good one, and I highly, highly recommend it. Now, in terms of her other works, she has on futekiya, another one, Even If You Close Your Eyes, You Can See the Light, which is apparently very spicy too, so I will be checking that out. Maybe for the 25 Days of Manga I might just wait until afterwards so I can save it for later, but hey, I might be reading it tonight, I don't know. It looks good, so I will definitely be picking that up and reading that sometime soon. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention is the fact that there are dramas available. Now, Pornographer was made into a 6-episode Japanese drama that aired, I think, in the summer of 2018, and became very popular. And that's another thing. It's like all of these things, I was like, oh yeah, I kind of remember this, but I don't really, because I didn't actually engage with it too much. So, Pornographer is available as a drama. I might try and see if I can hunt down where I can watch that. And then, of course, they made the next volume into a 6-episode series for 2019. So it's actually 2 different series, and you can try and see if you can find a copy of that. And apparently there is the 3rd volume made into a one-off movie, which will be released sometime next year in 2021, just early, like February or March time, I think. So if you are interested in Pornographer or the whole series in 3, I definitely recommend that you go check it out on futekiya, or if you are so inclined, maybe go and find the J-drama. I haven't watched a lot of J-drama recently, other than, of course, Cherry Magic, and It's been a while since I watched any, so I'm enjoying Cherry Magic so much that it's made me think maybe I should go back to watching some J-dramas again, just to polish up on my Japanese listening skills, and also because they might actually be entertaining. So I should probably do that. So yes, I definitely recommend this series of 3 on futekiya if you fancy it. There was cozy sweaters, and there was even some fairly cozy sweater action during some action. And I kind of like that, you know? Getting on but keeping yourself nice and toasty. Why not? So yes, the spicy chili rating is well deserved on this one. Very good work that I fully endorse. I've probably talked long enough about it. So check it out. Take care everyone. I'll see you in the next one. Remember, every day is a BL day.